again because he's been hot on the assassination attempts, the landslide election of Donald Trump, and now we have a new wrinkle that we're fighting about in Congress, and that is the debt ceiling and the debt and the finances. Martin Armstrong, thanks for joining us today on USAWatchdog.com.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
Before we start, I called you on the phone and said, am I crazy? I just had Bill Holter on, and he was talking about the identities of shadow banks that used a new BOE tool, it's a bailout tool, to be secret. And he was talking about this starting on the 1st of January 2025. Nobody reported this. Holter got this. And the BOE fears disclosure stigma would worsen financial instability. This is a Bloomberg story. And then I looked back and I had him on talking about this a while ago, and people forgot about the story. We have 63 banks that got in trouble in June, and the FDIC had to make a comment on it. Higher interest rates have created 63 problem banks, $517 billion in unrealized losses. This is the regional banks. I suspect the big banks too, says the FDIC. And the problem banks are still being kept secret. So also Barry Sternlicht, at the same time back in May, who's a big real estate developer. I know you know everybody. He says, because of this, we're going to have a bank failure week. It's coming. It's coming. Bank failures are going to be a very common thing that's coming, and the BOE is signaling, well, we're going to keep everything secret, and the FDIC is already keeping everything secret. I know you're a global entity. You don't just watch the Fed, or you don't just watch, the BOE or China. You watch the globe. Are we headed for a financial calamity, disaster, crisis?
Yes. 2025 is going to be a very interesting year, but our computer's been projecting we're going into a depression in some areas, most likely in Europe, a recession in the United States into 2028. I warned at our World Economic Conference. I stood up before our clients in November. I said, look, I got to call the shots the way the computer sees it. Right? It can't be personal opinions and stuff. And I said, very nice. Everybody was celebrating. It was the weekend after Trump won. I said, but I'm sorry, it's not going to be a blissful administration for him. I mean, this is, and he's not going to be able to prevent the economic decline. We have a serious problem on a global scale. They kept interest rates down so long, and they then tell banks that they must have government debt as their reserves, all right, because that's safe, all right. It's actually the worst debt possible, but so the problem we have is that most people, all these Fed watchers and stuff, they're raising rates, lowering rates. That's all very nice. It's just a bunch of propaganda, all right? The Fed can only control the short-term rates, not long-term. And that's the same for all central banks. That's what quantitative easing was all about. They were buying in the long-term bonds, the 30-year bonds, to try and reduce the supply, to influence, to bring down long-term rates, because they cannot do it directly. All right, and everybody's, the Fed's creating money, this, that. They're missing the entire point of this problem. All right, then you
to buy bonds. The problem is they want to buy the debt because they don't want to flood a debt to lower the rates. Buy the debt, lower the rates.
Right, that's what they were trying to do on the long end, because they cannot set the long-term rate, only the short-term rate. All right, you've just seen short-term rates go down, but the long-term rate goes up.
Yeah, the 10-year, you've been talking about this. The 10-year was at 4.4 around there, and they cut rates, and it went up to 4.5 and change. And it's like, wow, that wasn't what they wanted.
What's happening is that as you beat all the war drums in Europe, interest rates go up with war. And our computer warns, this is World War III, and Europe will lose this time. All right. But that aside from the point, it's when you have the long-term rates going up, people are losing confidence in government. You know, you just had the German government fail. All right, the French government. Take a look at the French, you know, what's happened there. Corporate bonds went below an interest below that of government. French government debt, you know, went above that of Greece. And Greece was supposed to be the basket case. All right, people are beginning to realize the problem is government. All right, just look at it this way: the Fed can raise interest rates to try to stop inflation. It creates it. This is why the Fed is now trapped between a rock and a very hard place. All right, Keynesian economics. It's failed. You can look on our site. You know, I had this discussion with Paul Volcker. All right, Paul, you know, basically in 1979 came out with a speech, and it's on our site. It's called The Rediscovery of the Business Cycle. He saw the economic decline in 1974, and it showed exactly opposite of Keynesian economics. All right, he said the new economics has failed. Now, that was 1979. They still teach this nonsense in schools. All right, and as a result, you have all these analysts and government, inflation, that's the Fed's job. Well, when Keynesian economics was born, the U.S. had a balanced budget. So it made sense. You raise interest rates to stop us from spending. Today, the government's the biggest borrower in the room. They raise interest rates, and what happens? Does anybody in government suddenly say, oh, gee, the Fed wants us to spend less. Let's cut our spending. Never going to happen. All right? So, this whole thing is just a complete joke. The debt limit. What's the purpose? All right? It was actually created in 1917 for World War I. And then they immediately, once they get their hands on money, they hate to ever give it back. So you had the first issue, Liberty Bond, then a second one, then a third one. Then they created the Ponzi scheme. Oh, you can take those first three and swap it into the fourth. What was the fourth Liberty Bond? Oh, it was going to be gold-backed and everything else. And then, what happened? 1933? They defaulted on gold. And most people don't realize it went to the Supreme Court. All right. Perry versus U.S. Chief Justice Hughes wrote the opinion. Roosevelt, what they did was unconstitutional. But guess what? The Constitution is basically just a scrap of paper, and if it goes against what they want to do, they ignore it. Although it was illegal, taking out, you sold this debt, you promised to pay in gold, all right? The purpose of the gold clause. Gold is not a hedge against inflation. It was a hedge against the devaluation of the currency, which is exactly what Roosevelt did. All right? And that's why the Supreme Court said it was unconstitutional.
Wow. You
sold these bonds at gold at $20.67. You then raised it to $35. You devalue the dollar, and you said, screw you. Here's greenbacks instead. They lost. People who bought the government debt for the fourth Liberty loan lost up to 70% of their actual international value.
Boy.
The governments do this all the time.
I got a couple of questions.
Go ahead.
I got to go. So you say that depression in Europe and a humdinger of recession here in the United States. What's it going to look like for the people on the street in the United States? What do you envision happening? I mean, you have these big conferences. Everybody in the world, who's who of central banks and big money, is there. People don't realize that. You have big money coming to these conferences to see you in person. But anyway, what is it going to look like for the little guy? What's it going to look like?
Look, I mean, I'll be honest. You know, Camilla was an absolute disaster. But, you know, Trump is anti-war, and, you know, so is RFK. And I had even spoken to RFK about it, and I had been to a dinner at Mar-a-Lago. So I knew Trump really was anti-war. However, whoever is advising him, and I'm not entirely sure who it is, what they are proposing is an absolute disaster. All right? This idea of tariffs. Before the income tax, the country was funded with tariffs. True. Okay. And so very simplistically, let's eliminate the income tax and go back the way it was. The problem is, Marxism came into play. All right, 1912 was the first convention for the Progressive Party. All right, led by, you know, Teddy Roosevelt. All right, so ever since then FDR put in all this stuff with Social Security and things of this nature. There's no possible way to fund all this nonsense with tariffs. All right, and we have to change the political system, actually. These people that talk about, return to a gold standard, I'm sorry, you know, that's not going to work.
Gold's still going to be good to have, right? I mean, gold's going to be good to have because people lose their trust.
Yes, you use it personally, okay? But we don't want the government to have a gold standard. They're going to come knocking on your door and say, give me all the gold in your sock drawer. You know, we don't want to go back to something like that. I mean, you might as well go back to communism in Russia as well, you know. But we are looking at a debt crisis here. The sovereign debt crisis is going to start really percolating in 25. It's probably going to reach a major crisis by 26 to 27. Why? Because, as I said, you have dictated that all these banks and pension funds throughout Europe, it depends on what country you're at, but up to 70% generally must be invested in government bonds. So if the government goes into a sovereign default, what happens? You wipe out the banking system and the pensions funds.
And do you think that's going to happen? The government's going to go into a sovereign default?
Oh, yeah.
So the banks and the pension systems, poof, goodbye by 2026?
How does the government default? It defaults when because we're in this Ponzi scheme. All right? They have to keep selling new debt to pay off the old. Throughout history, the city of Maine, you know, was doing that. All right? When you can't sell the new debt, what happens? That's when the default comes. You can't pay off the old.
And you think that's what it's going to look like? People are going to lose their money in the banks. And this interview, I tried to book you for this interview, and I said, I'm really worried about the banks. You said, yeah, you should probably have some cash. And I went, okay.
Yes.
So you think people should have some cash? You should go to the bank.
Yes, cash, physical paper money.
It's going to be that bad.
Bank deposit.
It's going to be that bad.
Look, we just had two hurricanes here. All right. This idea of Bitcoin and CBDCs and all, very nice. All right. But what's the reality? The internet was down for 10 days. All right. A credit card didn't work. You wanted something, it was cash only. The same thing in Canada. when Trudeau froze all the banks, told the banks to freeze all the accounts of all the truckers. They couldn't even buy food. Unless you had cash, you were dead in the water. This is what I'm saying. Have cash at this point in time. All right, because one bank goes down, they all tend to be interconnected. That infects another one, etc. This is why we're bailing out some of the big banks, because if they don't, if they take down, it's a ripple effect. All right, that goes through it. This is what people have. All the Fed is owned by banks, etc. Most of what was really set up at Jekyll Island has been so historically distorted. All right, it was a copy of what J.P. Morgan did in 1907. There were some banks that were in trouble. He got everybody together and he says, if we don't bail it out, they go down, they're going to come after us next. So that's what he did. He saved the banking system, making them understand if one goes down, it will create a contagion. He was correct. So at Jekyll Island, what they created, all right, and the reason that banks became the shareholders, it was because the government was not supposed to bail out the banks. It was going to be, the Fed was owned by the banks, they had to pay money into it, so if a bank went down, the Fed would bail it out, not taxpayer money. All right, so that's really what Jekyll Island was supposed to be about.
So, I want to just kind of go back to your conference, because I don't think people are grasping the people that show up there. And I know there's proprietary information involved in people who hire you and they talk to you in person or whatever, but is it uncommon for every top, some representative from every top central bank to come to your conferences? Is it uncommon for them to come in and talk to you?
No.
Okay. So I just want to make sure people understand that this isn't like a guess. You got inside knowledge and information that the system is not the system, and I'm not talking about any certain central bank, but the system is not doing well. Period. The end. And this is why they want to keep it secret. This is what the plan is. It's in the FDIC. It's at the Bank of England. I'm sure it's at the Bank of Japan. I'm sure it's at the Bank of Germany and France and all in these and the euro. They want to keep the disaster secret, but they won't be able to keep it secret, can they? When it blows up, can they keep it secret?
I just said about J.P. Morgan.
Okay.
All right. He convinced the banks to pool in their funds together to bail out the problem banks, to save the system. All right. If what they don't want is, and the reason they keep it secret, if you stand up and say, oh, well, this bank is in trouble, and that one's in trouble, and this one's in trouble, then it turns into a contagion. People are going to start saying, gee, maybe all the banks are in trouble. Maybe I better get my money out.
Well, maybe all the banks are in trouble. It sounds to me they're all in trouble. Am I wrong?
It depends upon their portfolio. All right, like the ones that went down in California. Look at the board that they had. Nobody with banking experience. They were political. Oh, he was a friend of Obama. This one, you're putting on unqualified people because of a political connection. That's it. All right. They do not know the banking system, no less how even the international economy functions. All right. You have to do some things in life to see it. I've actually been on a board of a bank, had to approve loans and not loans and etc. I've been there. I've been in the trenches. I've seen it from both sides of the fence. Believe it or not, or in the sequel to the Forecaster that's coming out, when they had thrown me in contempt of court, and you had the 2007 to 2009 crisis. All right. They wouldn't, the bankers, because I have the same level of experience, if not higher. All right. So when basically the shit hits the fan, I'm the one they always end up calling in. Because I'm on the opposite side of them. All right. They don't like that. They told the BOP to make sure nobody came in to even talk to me. All right.
Who's the BOP? The Bank of?
The Bureau of Prisons.
Oh, Bureau. Oh my God. I'm sorry. They didn't let people talk to you. They wouldn't. Oh my God.
It was in 2009. You'll see that the New Yorker did a 10-page article on me. I said, "How did you get in? They don't let anybody in here. They threatened the BOP. Why can we not speak to Armstrong? We can get in to see a terrorist, but we can't see Armstrong. What's going on? We're going to write a whole expose on what you people have done." So they let them in. All right. Then Congress was actually coming to me. I was speaking to Congress from prison for the 2007-9 crisis. All right. They had them throw me in the hole to cut off my communications. A member from Congress actually sent a letter to the Bureau of Prisons to investigate who put me in the hole to cut off my communications, with them no less. All right. I mean, you can't even make up all this stuff. So suddenly they take me out. No, okay, fine. I've been trying to get you out. Who? I didn't put you in there. That was the warden. I mean, it was just crazy. Absolutely crazy. The bankers don't particularly care for me too much, but because they're always trying to manipulate the markets. But look, I have the experience around the world on all this stuff,
I know you do,
and that's why.
And when you tell people you need cash, and I have 2 years of food, that tells me things are going to get really bad.
Yeah, look, you have to be mindful of what's going on here. I mean, there's going to be a new movie out, CBDC's The End of Money. I've appeared in that. I think it's online now. And it's just a control system. They want to eliminate cash. You eliminate cash, then what happens? You can't do a bank run. What do? You go down there and say, "Here, put all my money on a USB, please." Can't happen. All right. You get digital currency. Oh, well, sorry. They can turn it off at any time. It's all control system. That's what this is all about. All right. They're losing power and they know it.
So let's just circle back to the war question. I know the economic confidence model, the ECM, which apparently all the central banks are following. The economic confidence model, the ECM, that's your brand. We're already in a big war. I mean, is Putin going to hold off for Trump, who said that firing these missiles into long-range missiles in his press conference last week? He said firing these missiles into Russia is stupid. Are they going to try to hold off and see if they can cut a deal with Trump, or are we going to have war anyway?
Well, they are trying their hardest to create war before Trump even gets in. And I am concerned that if they can even create a false flag and then blame it on Russia, we have to understand they can declare martial law. Now, they can't prevent Trump from taking, power, but they can postpone it. All right.
Wow.
Look, martial law has actually been declared over 60 times in the United States. 60 times. Pearl Harbor. After that, Hawaii went into martial law, approved by the President of the United States. All right? They shut everything down. They control the press. Look at Zelensky. He's declared martial law. Oh, we're fighting for democracy. Yeah, right. He shut down all elections. He's a dictator and will not allow anybody to even, be elected.
So you think that the play here is to some sort of false flag, and even if they can't stop Trump, they can hold on to power to gum the country up so bad. Okay, there you go. Oh, 60 days later, here's the country. It's in a mess, in a war, in whatever. You're saying that they want to postpone his inauguration in January to keep gumming up the country and force that war up. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, look, they would like to kill him if they could. Look, the neocons are really calling the shots. It's not Biden. People have been coming out saying Biden can't even really articulate a full sentence anymore. But look, we would not allow Ukraine to use long-range missiles for the entire term Biden was in. All of a sudden, after the election, a few months, oh, okay, go ahead, wipe out Moscow if you want. See, look, it's already been admitted that Russia has captured most of the Donbass. It has taken 20% of the country. So why would you invade Russia and not defend your own country? Because Zelensky was just told to do so. Oh, if you go into Russia, maybe then he'll attack somebody in NATO and we can say he started World War III. What's the purpose of going into Russia? What are you going to do? Conquer it?
That's been a disaster for them. They've lost.
It's a complete disaster. They hide the numbers all the time.
Trump was saying that. Trump was talking about the carnage. He was talking about the carnage. He said it's worse than anything we've seen since World War II. He's sending big messages like, this has got to stop. He actually said that. This has got to stop.
Yeah, look,
God, they must hate, the deep state must hate that. Go ahead.
California, and started shooting missiles from California at Washington, would we do nothing?
Yeah, no.
Just put the shoe on the other foot. This is the neocons. They're scared to death of Trump and RFK. They don't like either because neither one of them will kowtow to their demands. They are in charge of this Biden administration. It's a complete disaster.
So are they afraid of going to jail? Are they afraid of going to jail? Because Marjorie Taylor Greene, not her, I'm sorry, Liz Cheney, she was allegedly witness tampering in this whole J6 things, to your point, saying it was a complete scam. 7 states were ready to take a look at the election, and they pump up this complete total scam in the Capitol. You have Christopher Wray can't say how many agents he had there, and that's coming out. You have an IG report. So this whole thing, are they afraid of going to jail?
Perhaps. Just become a Democrat and Biden will give the joke is he's going to pardon the entire Democratic Party, but look, you didn't need more confirmation that the neocons were in charge of the Biden administration and Camilla. When you had Republicans for Camilla, they were all the neocons. Then you had Dick Cheney come out and endorse Camilla. He would basically nuke Canada to get to Russians. These are horrible, horrible people.
And so for the person on the street with the banking crisis, we're going to have more war. I don't know if we'll have World War III, but more war. You think we'll have World War III?
Unfortunately, yes. Look, you have another area that people are not paying attention to, and that is Turkey. Putin is not. It's all neocon propaganda. Oh, he wants to resurrect the USSR. He does not. the Russian people do not want to go back there. All right. However, in Turkey, Erdogan does want to reestablish the Ottoman Empire.
Wow.
All right. He has called on all Arab countries to unite against Israel. He was the one behind the fall of Syria. And I can tell you, at very high level confidential sources, he called Moscow and he called Tehran and told both of them, do not interfere, we're going to take down Syria. That is, trust me, my sources are very good.
Well, they did. They did?
I mean, he's the one that made the calls.
Wow.
All right.
And what does this mean for a future war? I mean, is this going to spark more?
You're probably going to see Lebanon fall and also Jordan.
Whoa.
You're looking at an expansion of the Middle Eastern war. Turkey, look, I mean, the Turks are the ones that took down Constantinople, all right, ended the Byzantine Empire. They invaded Europe. There was the siege of Vienna in 1683. Most of your Balkans were all part of the Ottoman Empire till they started revolting against them. And, you know, the Ottoman Empire was a major empire. And Erdogan has said numerous times he wants to resurrect that. What was included in there? Egypt, all of Middle East, including Israel.
No, is this setting up Armageddon? Is that what you're saying in the Bible? Is this setting up Armageddon?
I don't know if it's Armageddon, but I've been there to Megiddo. I mean, it was a very nice plane, but
it's a big war. You're saying this is setting up for a big war?
Yes, he wants that war. Now, the biggest problem you have is that he has the biggest army in the Middle East.
I know people don't realize how big. Conventionally, it rivals the Russian army. It rivals. He doesn't have all the planes and the gadgets and the bombs, but the conventional forces are huge.
He's a member of NATO. He's even come out and said the West should fall. I mean, just look at some of his speeches. I mean, it is, you know, it makes, you know, Putin look like a Boy Scout.
So us looking at Russia isn't the look at. It's Turkey.
For the Middle East, yes. And look, I met with some high-level people from Congress, and they are being actually bullshitted. They're told, we're going to be at war with China. I said, really? I said, pay attention to the opposite side. Look at what they're doing in Russia. They are trying to bring Russia into war while telling you it's China. So you don't pay attention to what they're doing in Russia. All right, Putin has been sitting on his hands. And he knows what's going on. He's not stupid. He's probably one of the most intelligent leaders out there. I even have the declassified documents from the Clinton administration. Even Bill Clinton, when he met him, he says, this guy's very smart. So he knows what's going on.
When do you think this war takes off?
I think you're looking at, you know, probably April, May next year.
Wow.
Does not look very good. They are desperately trying to create something before Trump gets into office. They want to trap him into war because they know he's going to fire every neocon, even remotely at a third level post. Look, you're going to see a lot of this stuff come out, and I wish him the best of luck, but his tariff agenda is wrong. That that will only send the world into more of a depression outside.
Wow.
All right. What made people don't understand why is the dollar the reserve currency? And all we hear is this nonsense, oh, the dollar's going to crash, it's worth this. People, open your eyes, all right?
They cut rates and the dollar went up to 108 on the USDX.
Why? Because the U.S. has the biggest economy in the world. But it's a consumer-based economy. That means Germany needs to sell its BMWs and Mercedes here. Japan needs to sell its Toyotas. China needs to sell virtually all this other stuff. You cut that off. All right? What happens? First, you will create inflation in the United States because people are going to be paying much more in prices for things. But you will then send their economies into an economic decline. Because they go down, we can't sell stuff to them, and our economy declines. All right? Look, Germany, I've said it many times, Germany, for example, is still following the old, 18th century mercantile model. We build stuff, sell it to them, and take the money home. Google it. You'll find out the net worth of a German citizen is less than that of an Italian because they keep their taxes very high to prevent inflation. All right. The U.S. economy is consumer based. It has flourished. What is China doing? China has reviewed everything. They're very smart. All right. They are trying to build a consumer-based economy. The Silk Road, etc. All right, and they know what they're doing. And I can tell you, China will replace the United States as the reserve currency of the world, as the financial capital. We are committing economic suicide here. Both China and Russia have no intention of going back to communism. The people there don't want to hear about it. All right? Once they tasted freedom, they're not giving it up. We are still living under this delusion of socialism. Oh, everybody should be equal. Everybody, it doesn't work that way. I'm sorry. All right? You should be paying me $30 million a year to throw a football. All right, I might hit somebody in the head. All right, we don't all have the same talents. All right, those with a talent that is fewer than others get paid more. Simple as that. Supply and demand. All right, everybody can sweep a broom, just about, unless you're paralyzed or something like that. But so that's a low-paying job. A brain surgeon, not too many people can do that. So this is the way, a real economy functions.
So
we have to understand that.
Your economic confidence model shows a downturn. Everybody in the world is buying I suspect, without giving away the thing, I suspect all the big players are buying your research. Am I wrong?
Look,
so they know this is coming.
Just about everybody started cutting rates as soon as the model turned on May 15th.
Okay, all right, I say that. So what should John Doe do? I mean, you're talking food and cash. What should the little guy on the street do now that you can? Okay, so the big guys are getting ready, and so they have enough money and enough bunkers and whatever they need. But what should the little guy do? Get cash? You've said this before. Get food. What should the little guy do to kind of soften the blow?
Look, I think you're going to see a correction here in gold short term, mainly because the dollar is king. All right, as the dollar gets pushed up, that will come down. if you look at the stock market, we're probably looking at more of a major type high in the NASDAQ. All right. When you look at the Dow, I mean, I posted on our private blog the 3 different arrays. You can see the Dow, the S&P, and the NASDAQ. The Dow does not look like a major long-term high. So we're probably dealing more like, in the NASDAQ, more of like a dot-com bubble type thing. The big money, when it starts to shift from Europe and Asia, will go into the Dow. So pay attention to the Dow. As the Dow rises, it's international capital coming. NASDAQ is the retail domestic speculator. The big money doesn't go into that. All right. You know, a big fund manager will lose his job very quickly if he bought something and it drops by 50%. All right. The same thing on Bitcoin. You've probably reached a very important high at this stage in the game. You know, people were shocked. All right, it came down. Because the Fed said we can't even hold it. No, they can't. All right. Bitcoin is not money. That's just been a sales propaganda thing. Medium of exchange means it's something that everybody will accept.
Yeah, it's down below 100,000 now. You think it's going to go lower?
I mean, look, there's a risk of it falling by 50% even. It's just been way overblown. I suggest watching the movie, the CBDCs, The End of Money. Bitcoin was created by those of us in the programming field know there was no Japanese mysterious guy. It was all created by the intelligence community to sell it to us, to give up our paper cash. This is what this is about, all control. They used Bitcoin basically to do that. Bitcoin got off from a start because it was being used. If you go back and look at where it began and all the volume, it was coming from China. Bitcoin can be used for money laundering. They were buying it there in China and selling it in the United States, and you got your money out and it didn't go through a bank. All right, the Europeans have been doing the same thing, which is why the Bitcoin has rallied. Okay, it's been a great vehicle to basically, because it's the same thing. It is like gold. All right. I mean, back in the 90s, I was helping the Japanese reduce the trade surplus. How did we do it? We bought gold in New York and sold it in London. The trade numbers, nobody's at the docks counting the number of Toyotas coming in. All right, they just look at the amount of dollars going back and forth. That's it. That's what your trade numbers are. So if we bought gold and we exported it to London, guess what? Oh, that's dollars going out, so we sold more goods. That was just gold. You know, but I mean, if you understand the game with all these numbers, you can circumvent just about everything with no problem.
Would you be a buyer of gold? Would you, if you were trying to get cash and food and try to, if you're facing a banking crisis, would you be a holder of gold?
Yeah, I mean, look, you'll get a correction. I would look at it as a more of a buying opportunity longer term. Nothing is a store of value. Nothing. Why? Because everything fluctuates. Everything goes up and it goes down. So this idea that something's a store of value will always be worse, no, sorry. It goes up and it goes down. That's just simply the way it is. Sometimes your stock market's going to do better. Other times gold will do better. Bonds will do better. I mean, we move back and forth between all these different things. That's, as a hedge fund manager, that was my job. What is the sector we should be looking at next? That's what you have to do from an international perspective.
What's the sector should we be looking at next? Gold?
Eventually, yes. I mean, what will happen is, as you get war going on in the Middle East and in Europe, all right, capital will come here to U.S. That's what it did also for World War I, World War II. The Roaring '20s, that was all created because capital concentrated here after World War I.
Everything was blown up.
The Japanese boom into 1989 was the same thing. All right, everybody was there. They were buying the Nikkei. Why? Because the yen was going up as well. Whatever a Japanese made, a foreigner made an additional 20% on the currency. All right, you have to look at these things from a global perspective. You know, all these people just, oh, what the Fed's going to do? That's very nice. You know, they are ignorant of everything that's taking place outside this country. All right, and that's far more important on an international level of capital flows. If the capital comes in, I mean, you can go to our site. We published a chart of call money rates. All right, from the 1890s. All right, the call money rate was the lowest high in 1929. Its peak was almost 200% 1899. Why? 1899 was a panic and the capital was leaving the United States. Capital outflows. 1929, the capital from World War I all concentrated here. So interest rates went up, but they went up the least amount compared to others. 1907, 1899. It depends where capital is concentrating. Is the capital coming in or out?
And you think the capital, with war and all that's going on, is going to come in? Going to come in?
You got no choice.
Are we going to have more inflation?
Oh, yeah, of course. Because you also end up with shortages, things of this nature.
Okay. So the little guy should buy things. The little guy should buy food.
Yeah. Well,
have cash. Maybe some gold. Pay off some stuff.
If you're into debt, lock it in. Fixed rate. Because your long-term rates are going up. As war comes in, long-term rates will go higher. So the Fed just lowered the rates, but the 10-year went up. All right, this is, the smart money is beginning to smell a rat. All right, and you're looking at, take emerging markets. Brazil. All right, oh, BRICS founding member. Sounds very nice. Okay, they're in serious trouble. Why?
Hold on.
The dollar goes up. Guess what? They owe 20% more in their debt. This is what brings down governments. I've seen it. I've been called into so many different crises, and they end up being, particularly when you're borrowing in one currency versus another, and you don't understand foreign exchange. I mean, I met with the Swiss Central Bank about 2 weeks before the Euro-Swiss peg broke. I think FX Street named me, forecast, analyst of the year for that. But I met with them about 2 weeks before. I said, look, the peg is going to break. Met with the guy in charge of it. Oh, well, we think we can hold it. I said, well, let me put it to you this way. Nobody has ever been able to do this. All right? I think the odds are on my side. It's going to go. Within 2 weeks, the peg broke. These bankers were selling Swiss loans for mortgages throughout Europe. All of a sudden, everybody owed 20% more in their mortgage. I mean, it just wiped out so many people. But politicians and academics do not understand how things function. You want to create a peg? Very nice. It's an absolute guaranteed trade. Soros, made a shitload of money. Why? because I could sell $1 trillion on a fixed peg. If I'm wrong, I get my money back because it didn't move. If I'm right, boy, I make a ton of money.
Yeah. Well, the warning
It's
is
a guaranteed trade. It's like going to the casino. You keep putting it down on number 23. You lose 10 times. They keep giving you your money back. Try again.
well. This basically to kind of do a recap. Rates are going higher. Looks like we're going to have war. Capital's going to flow into the United States. Buy food, get cash, and be careful with your debt. Am I wrong?
Right. You don't want the a floating rate or something like that. Fix it, because particularly as you go into war, long-term rates go up. And just look at France. All right, government rates are now higher than corporate. That's showing you people trust the corporate side rather than the government side. That's what will happen. This is a shift from public confidence to private.
Martin Armstrong, thanks for coming on and taking us to school and give us an update, man. Feeding the hot hand. I mean, Turkey's going to take over. They want to have the automated watch turkey. Holy cow. You think that Lebanon and Jordan could fall as well? It's another big headline. Lots of headlines. Martin Armstrong, thanks for joining us today on USAWatchdog.com.
It's always a pleasure, Craig. Take care.
And as we close, a bit of news breaking out of California.